Okay, perfect. All right, I think we'll get started. So hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on the benefits of returns on eBay and the seller protections that are in place. We're thrilled to have you with us today as we dive into this important topic that affects a lot of us on eBay. So if you ever wondered how returns can actually benefit your business or how eBay has your back when things don't go as planned, then you're definitely in the right spot. And we understand that things can go wrong with returns, so we're here to equip you with the guidance and knowledge you need to navigate them with confidence. So my name is Margarita, and I'm going to be your host for today. But before I get started, I'd just like to make an acknowledgement of country. So I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we work today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and recognise and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Australia. So I'm excited to introduce our two fantastic speakers who will be sharing their insights and expertise with us today. First up, we have our shipping manager, Keaton, who will be guiding us through the importance and benefits of returns and how to set up returns on eBay. Keaton has a knack for making complex topics seem easy to understand, and I'm sure you'll find his presentation both informative and engaging. Following Keaton, you'll hear from our amazing trust expert, Ruby, who will discuss how you're protected when returns go wrong. Ruby has a wealth of knowledge, and she'll be sharing with you some real-life examples and resolutions, ensuring you leave today feeling confident in the protections available to you as a seller. So we encourage you to participate actively in this webinar. Feel free to drop questions in the Q&A section, and we'll address them personally throughout the chat. So without further ado, let's just get started. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Keaton. Thanks, Keaton.
Thanks, Margarita. Hope everyone can see me. Hi, everyone. To quickly introduce myself, my name is Keaton. I look after the shipping experience here at eBay Australia for both buyers and sellers. I've been at eBay just over 5 years now and have around 15 years experience in e-commerce operations and supply chain logistics experience, which gives away my age a little bit. Anyway, on to the topic of returns. So I wanted to start off with showing you an item on eBay. And to point out this small section on a listing and the importance of that. So this is an example where an item is not accepted returns. And here at eBay, we do see that there is a risk of not having a returns on your listings, and that it can hinder your sales on your items. For example, if the buyer may not be confident that the size of the item will fit, or if they receive the item and they just don't like it in person and they want to return the item. So it gives them that confidence with adding a returns, with accepting returns on your items. Yes, so it shows that returns policies are a crucial aspect of the online shipping experience. In fact, looking into some stats, according to last year's e-commerce report, over 3 in 4 online shoppers will check the returns policy as part of their purchasing journey. So having a clear returns policy helps build trust for your buyers and reduces that risk for their purchasing decision. I've just pointed out here an example of this is an eBay Plus listing, and it's got that shop with confidence, which includes free returns to help reduce that risk on when they're buying the item. And if you've checked the latest Australia Post e-commerce report, you've seen that last week 65% of online shoppers say easy returns contribute to a better buying experience. And this percentage rises for Gen Zs and millennials. And to top this off, free returns is the most important part of the delivery experience after fast and free. So again, just pointing out the importance of accepting returns on your listings. From what we see, on average, for items that accept returns, as well as longer return windows, so for example, 30 to 60-day returns, are factors that improve your conversion rate. And this is especially for items with free shipping. Okay, so enough of the stats. On to the experience of returns on eBay. So the aim of the returns process on eBay is to reduce the time you spend managing returns and refunds on eBay, as well as a help to reduce potential claims and or buyer contacts. So to give you an example of the flow for a buyer raising a return on an item. So one, if you offer returns on your listings and the buyer wants to return the item, it's also accepted most of the time, unless there's particular scenarios where a buyer has selected arrives damaged or missing parts or pieces. Then two, this would allow the buyer to receive a return label instantly. Again, like I said, in most cases. Once a label's been generated, tracking is automatically uploaded for both you and the buyer to be able to check the return delivery process. And then number three, there's two scenarios here. So one, if you offer free returns on your listings, or if the item's being returned is being covered by eBay's money back guarantee policy. For example, when there's a return reason of significantly not as described, so like wrong item sent, for example. eBay will provide the buyer with the cheapest label available. So and then from that, you as a seller will only be charged when the label is used, and so once the buyer has sent the item back. And then the other option is if the buyer is responsible for the return postage, then the buyer has the option to choose between Australia Post and Hubs, based on the convenience of that buyer. Hubs have a network of convenience stores nationwide for buyers to drop off their return parcel if they want to choose other than Australia Post, and the rates slightly differ. And then lastly, number four, once you've received your item back, you'll have up to 3 business days to review and provide the refund back to the buyer. Otherwise, we may automatically issue a refund on your behalf to speed things up for the buyer. So, as I mentioned, we have 2 carriers available for returns on eBay. We have Australia Post and we have Hubs. Again, it's to provide the convenience for the buyer and give them options in the best way to send their item back. Obviously, the rates range as well for the buyer, as well as like I said, if it's a seller paid return, we provide the cheapest option. Next, so the 3 main return flows. So I briefly mentioned above, return labels are provided automatically for the first option. These are most of the cases where it's remorse returns, for example, of change of mind or did not like the item when it arrived. But then also with our eBay money back guarantee, as I mentioned, significantly not described. That doesn't include counterfeit, damaged, faulty, or whatnot. And then the second scenario is when a response from the seller is required, and this is scenarios where the buyer has selected a reason code of damaged or faulty or counterfeit, and the other option is RMA enabled sellers. So RMA, or you can call it return authorization number. It's when a seller for your operations, you'd like to include your own return ID or return number. You can include that to display on the label, on the return label, to help with your operations when you receive the item back. Cool. And then lastly, there's a third option of when a label is not possible to be provided, and that's when we have low value items, bulky items over 22 kilos in weight. And then other options of when it's an international return. So if you're a seller that's based outside of Australia. Cool. So what I've got here, I've got a few buyer return flows to give you an idea of what it looks like for the buyer when they're raising an item, raising a return on eBay. So to start off with, they click return this item. They get to then select the reason for that. add some additional information if necessary. And for buyer paid returns, they have a choice between, like I said, between carrier. So they get to see the price at what they will be charged once they use that label between Hubbed and Australia Post. And then straight away, majority of the cases, they'll provide a label instantly. So this is the best scenario for a buyer to send their item back straight away and be able to get it back into the hands of yourselves in order to for the buyer to receive that refund and continue hopefully through their purchasing journey again. For seller paid returns, so there's a step removed. So this, like I said, the cheapest label is offered. So the buyer doesn't select a carrier at this stage. And as soon as they raise that return, they confirm a return, they'll receive a free return label instantly to be able to send their item back. And then lastly, this is a scenario when we're unable to provide a label for the buyer, and we advise them the best next steps in order to send their item back to the seller. Okay, also including the returns details. So once a buyer's returned, selected to return the item, they can go back into their purchase history, which is this screenshot on the left. They can see the returns details, and once they click in, they can see the tracking number that's automatically been uploaded. Once that's there, they can also have the opportunity to reprint a label, which is available to then send their item off. Once the buyer has sent the item, here's the flow of what it looks like. And once the item has been delivered and the return has been the return has been confirmed by the seller, the postage label in this scenario, if you can see on the right side, the postage label is deducted from the refund of the buyer for a buyer paid return. Cool. And then going on to seller returns flow. So for those who haven't started accepting returns on your listings and intrigued to see what it looks like for you as a seller, this is what it looks like. So again, as I said, auto accepted returns will happens a majority of the time, and when you accept returns on your listings. So this is what it looks like. You'll receive a notification that a buyer has started a return within your seller hub. And then if you want to click into the details, you can see the return details there, and it'll include the tracking number, the carrier, and the reason of why they're sending the item back. You do have the opportunity there and then to offer a refund straight away for the seller, but obviously in most cases, you'd like to receive the item back to check everything's all good and refund the buyer upon delivery. So in scenarios where a seller response is required, there is a different scenario in this middle screenshot here where you have three options. So obviously this is a stage when say a damaged or faulty claim, and you then will either accept, if you do then accept that is the case, you have an option then to either provide an eBay label, upload your own return label, scenario here. Otherwise, there's a third option of confirm you've sent a label. So this is a scenario, say if you've been already messaging with the buyer and you've already sent a label to them to be able to send the item back. If you've chosen to provide an eBay label within this flow of having to respond to a return, you do have the option here to change the return address at this stage. But this is also a scenario when you have selected within your return settings to enable RMA. Again, RMA is another acronym for Returns Authorization Number, so that this number can be included on the return label for your operations. So this option here on the right side, you can include as an option there to include your return ID and then confirm the label for the buyer. Okay, so that's most of the screenshots there. So it's just to summarize kind of the main benefits of what I've just kind of talked through, and yeah, unlocking the benefits to enable the best experience for both yourselves as well as your buyers. So to start off with, again, it's I've mentioned it a few times through this instant return labels. When a seller offers returns, most of the time they're auto accepted. So that eliminates that manual review process and enables quicker returns and faster refunds for the buyer. Faster resolution, so reduce manual handling, accelerates the closure of returns, and then boosting satisfaction, especially for buyers in what we see. This also means fewer escalations. So with the speed of refunds and returns, it helps decrease customer service inquiries and those escalation risks. And lastly, to point out that cost-effective return labels. So we have a good relationship with our carriers that we have on, and we're always trying to provide the best rates possible for our users. And yeah, with those two carriers available, we're able to provide the cheapest label available, especially for seller paid returns. Okay, that should be everything from me. And then, so yeah, what I've done, I've just gone through what it looks like for returns on eBay, and I'll pass it on to Ruby to show you how you're protected when something goes wrong. On to you, Ruby.
Awesome. Thanks, Keaton. My name's Ruby. I've worked across both shipping and trust teams in my time at eBay. So although we kind of know a lot of returns, you shouldn't encounter an issue, we do know that sometimes things can go wrong and you do encounter some issues. So today I'm going to walk you through 3 examples of how eBay can protect you when something does go wrong. So we'll start off with when you believe a buyer has incorrectly opened an item not as described return. So when a buyer opens a return, they are asked to choose a return reason to why they are returning an item. So some of these reasons are they've changed their mind, and some of these reasons is because the buyer believes they encountered an issue with the item. So an example of when you believe a buyer has falsely claimed the item was not as described could be that they may choose the reason code doesn't match description or photos, but then the comment the buyer has entered, or they send an eBay message that indicates they are returning because they didn't like the item or they changed their mind. So we have a protection available here. So to be eligible, you need to make sure you report the buyer. So we have a report buyer hub that you can find the transaction associated with that return and report the buyer, and then ensure you complete the return. So when we talk about completing the return, this means accepting the return if it's not already an auto accept return, as well as refunding the buyer when the item is returned back to you. So if we determine that the buyer's incorrectly chosen a reason code, such as an item not as described reason code, we'll provide a postage label credit. We'll remove any neutral or negative feedback associated with the transaction and remove the transaction from your service metrics report as well. So I think I saw in the chat earlier that a few of you are encountering issues like this. So it's really important using the report a buyer feature that you kind of let us know that this is happening so we can then enable those protections for you. So on to the second use case, I'll talk about damage returns. So this is where you receive your item back, but it's not in the same condition as it was sent out in. So you're getting the same item back, but it may have been used or it may have been damaged in some way, and you can't resell it for the same price as you originally sold it if it was the same item condition as you sold it. So for example, brand new. So if this occurs, we allow sellers to deduct up to 50% of the item's value. So if you do decide to deduct a cost, ensure that you just add comprehensive comments and upload any images associated with the return. So then if this return is escalated to eBay at any point, our team can understand what has occurred by the comments and images you've provided to us. So to be eligible for this protection, your account must be Australian registered eBay account. You need to just make sure you're meeting our selling performance standards. So just make sure your store isn't below standard in seller standards, or you're not evaluated as very high in your service metrics. So similar to the first use case, we also require you to complete that return and issue the buyer a refund at the deducted amount. So we allow 10% all the way up to 50% refund deduction here. When you do deduct, you don't need to go and report the buyer because we're already aware of it through the refund deduction, but we will protect you by removing any negative or neutral feedback associated with this transaction, and as well as removing the transaction from your service metrics performance if it was an item not as described, return reason code here. And then moving on to the third example. So the third use case is what we call fraudulent returns. So we don't expect too many people to have experienced a fraudulent return, but there are some rare use cases, and we do want to make sure you are aware of them. So in the unfortunate situation you do encounter a fraudulent return, you know what to do. So we usually see fraudulent returns occurring for high value items. So if you sell kind of higher ASP items, and more specifically in the consumer electronics space as well. So if you sell those kind of items, this might be a little bit more relevant to you, but that doesn't mean that fraudulent returns can't occur across any category that you're selling in. So a fraudulent return is where a different item is returned to what you originally sold. So I've got a list of items there, examples there on the screen, such as empty box. You sold a higher model kind of iPhone or phone, and then they returned a lower model phone. These would all be classified as a fraudulent return. Fraudulent returns can actually also occur when the buyer manipulates the shipping label to deliver the parcel back to a different address. So sometimes when we talk about carriers here, sometimes, Australia Post may intercept the parcel if they notice that the barcode on the shipping label doesn't exactly match the delivery address on the label. So we do sometimes see, these are intercepted. So I'm going to kind of run you through a few different scenarios of what to do when you encounter a fraudulent return, because it does kind of show itself in different examples. So on the next slide, if a delivery scan has occurred and you don't have the parcel, this could indicate that the buyer may have manipulated that delivery address on the label. Or if there's no delivery scan that has occurred and the tracking events has stopped, which could indicate the carrier has intercepted the parcel. So when this kind of happens and you notice this activity, you need to contact our eBay customer service and ask them to put the return on hold for you. So if, we escalate, the buyer potentially escalates the return to a case because they're pressuring, you to give a refund, this is where you can contact customer service, explain what has happened, and ask them to put the case on hold for you. Then that gives you a couple of days to contact the carrier and understand, what has occurred with this parcel. So this could include potentially confirmation that the item was delivered to a different address than your address. This could include information that they intercepted the parcel or the parcel's been lost. And then you can provide that evidence back to our customer service team and they can help you from there. In the event that the buyer has potentially already been refunded, so sometimes, you know, a fraudulent return will occur. You might be really busy running your business and a case is escalated and you don't get time to address it in those 3 days. We do understand that does sometimes happen. We obviously always encourage you to keep an eye on your return requests and cases that do come through. But if, you know, the buyer is refunded, you don't have the return item, you can complete a statutory declaration form and submit that to our customer service team to be protected for this one, because we do understand sometimes, you know, you don't have the item, you didn't go and refund the buyer and it turned into a case. So there is a bit of a fallback protection here. If you do believe it's fraud, we just ask for you to submit that statutory declaration to us to be protected. So make sure that you report the buyer, because in these situations, you know, if we don't know about it, you know, these buyers will just go and target other sellers and try and get away with potentially fraudulent activity with other sellers. So we want to make sure that, like, you know, we're aware of this happening. That's why reporting the buyer, contacting our customer service team as early as you suspect something may be fraudulent is the best way to go about here. So that wraps up the 3 different return scenarios and how you can be protected. So I've run through when a buyer falsely claims an item not as described. I've run through damage returns, and then we've wrapped up here on fraudulent returns. So hoping these examples and kind of use cases can kind of help you if you do come across an issue while you're selling. So yeah, I'll hand back to Margarita now to wrap up, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Ruby, and thank you to Keaton as well. We've had a really insightful session there. Thank you so much to everyone who's tuned in to our webinar today on returns, and we appreciate everyone who's stayed on till the very end. Thanks again for your time this morning. We have a post-webinar survey that will pop up straight after this meeting ends, so please complete it and just let us know how we did, whether you found this webinar useful and what we could do better next time as well. We'll also be uploading this webinar onto our YouTube channel, so you can check it out there, but we'll send you a link for you to access that as well. We'll be staying on for another 10 minutes or so just to answer any more of your questions on the Q&A. So please feel free to pop in your questions there and you can get some answers personally. Yeah, so thank you so much again, and we'll hang on for a little bit longer as well. Thank you.